few days ago I got caught in this crazy rainstorm here in Bangkok, and this video is going to be the behind the scenes of that rainy day photo shoot. It was a very cinematic street photography session, and it was also the first time I ever got to try out my new Xpan film camera. It did get pretty sketchy at times and even a bit disgusting, more about that later, but in the end it was worth it for the photos. So the Fujifilm TX1 is the Japanese version of the Hasselblad Xpan, the legendary panoramic film camera. This is a camera that I wanted to get my hands on for a while, and I actually been trying to buy for like the last 6 months. But up until recently, eBay never accepted my credit card, but then one day it just magically worked, and this camera just arrived like a week ago. I'd never actually used this camera before. The original plan was just to go for a quick photo shoot, get familiar with the camera and learn how to use it. The crazy thunderstorm was not really in the forecast at all. There was maybe a little bit of drizzle, so I brought an umbrella. But the massive storm kind of took me by surprise. It wasn't ideal, I wasn't completely prepared for it. I only brought 2 rolls of Lomography 400. I wasn't entirely sure how to use the camera properly, how to expose properly, but I had to make the most of it and kind of learn on the fly. So it already starts raining on the way to the destination while we are in the car, and the rain is quite hard. So I'm getting excited because the potential for great photos is gonna be there if it rains that hard. But I'm also a little bit nervous because, you know, I never actually used this camera before, and some things can go wrong in a situation like that. And I did not bring any other cameras, so it's not like I can salvage the situation. So I took these photos at first, and unfortunately, because I am shooting in full auto and I am focusing on, keeping my camera dry so it doesn't break, and I'm also focusing on the panoramic compositions, I kind of forgot that in a situation like this you're supposed to overexpose the film by a little bit, because in changing light conditions the highlights are so bright that the meter is not going to do the best job. Well, some of these photos are still fine, like for example this photo of the chef. It works underexposed because it's kind of minimal and cinematic. But other photos that I took later, not the best. They are just a little bit underexposed. Now I'm shooting Lomo 400 at 1600, so it's pushed 2 stops. But the photos later, after the sun is already down, ironically the scene is not as challenging for the meter, and the photos later are better exposed. But all of these are a little bit under, and because it's film, there's only so much you can do in the editing. So that is totally on me for not getting familiar with the camera before so that I can be comfortable. As the sun kept going down, the rain kept getting hotter and hotter, and it created this really beautiful glow and light that was just really a pleasure to photograph. And these photos are probably the first good photos that I took on this day. It helped that I slowed down a bit, and also the light was just right and they are not underexposed. And when I got the scans back, when I saw these, I really started falling in love with the Xpan format. They just look really nice on a wide screen. It's just a really cinematic camera, and it's a really awesome feeling when you get film back and it looks almost better than you could even expect. And on top of that, the 45mm f4 lens is so sharp that I've never actually used a film camera with a lens this sharp before. So when I saw these photos I was totally converted, and I think this is gonna be my main camera for the next while. I just gotta fix the exposure issues a little bit and get more comfortable with it. But I think there is so much potential with this camera. It's just a super cinematic aspect ratio and the compositions that it allows, and combined with the just pure quality of the rendering of the lens, that easily just makes this camera worth the money. Even though it is quite an expensive camera, I paid about 4,000 US dollars plus import tax fees for this camera. It's a mint condition TX1 with the 45mm lens. It is the exact same camera as the Hasselblad Xpan, it's just the Japanese version of it. The original Xpan has some problems with paint peeling, and I just kind of like the look of this one better with the wooden grip, and just the way that it looks is cool. Now I guess some people would say that maybe shooting panoramas on film is a bit of a gimmick, and it's certainly not worth $4,000. But honestly, the lens on this thing is pretty much Leica quality, and the whole camera is so nice that honestly it's worth the money, in my opinion. I would sell my Leica instantly if I had to decide between this one and the Leica. It is by far my favorite camera, even though this might be, you know, like a honeymoon period with it. But for my style of photography and just the fun factor of shooting film like this, it is an absolute blast to use this camera. Now, some might say that it's not the best camera for Instagram photos, which it isn't, because those panoramic photos just look terrible on a small phone screen, but you know, I don't really care about that anymore. Twitter is overtaking Instagram anyways these days, and if you wanna see some high quality Xpan photos, you can follow me on Twitter at tmoosephoto. And of course, seeing them on a big screen on YouTube is the most ideal way to enjoy these photos. The effect doesn't really come across if you look at it on a phone in the same way. It's such a cinematic Blade Runner like scenery that I'm just having the time of my life. It's my absolute favorite kind of thing to photograph, and I'm definitely going back to Bangkok Chinatown whenever it rains this hard again. So whenever you get this amount of rain or fog, it can really kind of transform any scene that you are shooting. It's kind of the secret ingredient if you are willing to endure the conditions. But speaking of enduring those conditions, the rain really doesn't let up, and it's actually getting hotter and hotter, and it's starting to flash a lot of lightning directly above us, and the streets are starting to flood below. Now, of course, I was totally unprepared for this situation. Not only am I almost out of film, I only brought 2 rolls, and Xpan allows 20 photos per roll because it's shooting panoramic images. I'm also not wearing any kind of rain gear. My shoes are completely soaked, and so are my pants. And actually very soon after this point I had to duck behind one of these corners for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because the wind got so hard that it was like a typhoon. A lot of stuff was flying and I couldn't get out of the corner because it was really dangerous at that point. Here's a little demonstration of the conditions that I shot basically for my Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at timo.jpeg. In fact, I didn't even think I was gonna make this kind of a video, but I always pack my Osmo Pocket and obviously my phone. So all of the kind of B-roll digital footage that you should see on this video is shot with my Osmo Pocket or just my phone. But I do kind of regret not bringing, you know, a proper digital camera or more film. Kind of a missed opportunity, but hey, at least I was there. So before the rainy season started, I'd kind of been struggling with street photography here in Bangkok. It's probably not the easiest city, not the most beautiful city to take street photos. It's not as easy as Tokyo, for example. but rain just kind of makes everything easier, especially when it's really hard rain. It just kind of makes everything into kind of like a movie set in a way. Everything looks nicer. There's like texture and glow and umbrellas and a lot of interesting reflections and details that there wouldn't be in the dry. So as long as you're willing to endure the conditions, going out to shoot in the rain is absolutely worth it, in my opinion. But when it comes to enduring the conditions, in Bangkok, it doesn't mean just getting extremely wet. And it doesn't mean, you know, having to swim in the flood even. Even having to avoid these occasional flying objects that might kill you, believe it or not, even that is not the worst part about enduring the conditions. If you follow me on Instagram, you might guess where this is going. But in case you haven't heard the story, the first time that I encountered this kind of a floody condition here in Bangkok was a couple of weeks ago. There was a massive thunderstorm just like during the day. It was so massive that it actually looked kind of like a nighttime scene. I just wanted to go out for like maybe 10 minutes because the scene was just so attractive. So I decided just to go a little bit outside my apartment. You know, for the first 10 minutes, I was really enjoying myself. The water is starting to build up a little bit, but I'm just not really paying attention to it. I'm composing my photos and taking my sweet time and probably looking like a madman to the locals who don't understand what the hell I'm doing. Standing in the absolutely pouring rain, just taking photos and smiling. But after a few minutes of this, I feel something on my shoulder, which is pretty normal because, you know, it's raining, you know, things are gonna hit you, water's gonna hit you. But turns out it wasn't water, it was a massive cockroach on my shoulder, which I just swiped away. You know, it's just a cockroach, no big deal. Until, of course, a couple minutes later, I felt the same feeling again. And it was another cockroach. And I killed it again. I mean, I didn't kill it, I just, you know, made it fly. Now, at this point, the feeling, it did not go away. And at this point, the rain was so hard that I kind of found shelter under this, you know, like shop. It was like, I don't know, some sort of a office building, a wooden office building. And the regular street was already flooded like this much, so it wasn't easy to step into this. So I was just like in this elevated space. But you know the feeling when you haven't really been paying attention and then you start noticing things. So I look down and I see, I don't know, a lot of cockroaches just like hanging out in the same space that I'm taking shelter, and I'm still feeling the very uncomfortable crawling feeling all over my body. So at this point, it gets clear to me that there's not just one or two, but at least 3 or 4 cockroaches crawling all over my body, and a bunch more on the ground, looking to crawl up my legs if I let them. And at this point, I kind of panic a little bit. I go into fight or flight mode, and flight is kind of ruled out because of the flood, so I must fight. So I kind of smash one of the cockroaches here on my shirt, which of course was a white t-shirt, leaving a very beautiful mark. And then there's still like, I don't know, 2 or 3 cockroaches on my body, which is like kind of, I go into this weird panicky dance and I get rid of all of them. And at that point I want to take a bath in acid and just disappear, because even though they are technically just cockroaches, it is one of the most disgusting feelings ever when you're crawled all over your body by these little disgusting insects. And the reason this happens is when the streets get so flooded that their homes get like kind of flushed out, and they start surfing in the water, and they will look for any kind of lifeline that they can find. So they're trying to use human legs as their lifeboats. So if you stand in the wrong place for just a little bit too long, they will find you and they will crawl up your leg and then use you as kind of a boat. And this is the unfortunate reality of, you know, rain photography in Bangkok. When it rains, it pours, and when it pours, the cockroaches come out to play. So then, fast forward to a couple days ago on this Chinatown shoot. Again, the same thing for the first 15-25 minutes. The flood is not that bad. no really cockroaches, but as more time goes on, I noticed a couple of cockroaches. So I thought, hey, let me make a funny Instagram story reminding people of the story last time, which got a lot of attention for some reason. People really loved the story. So as I'm recording these cockroaches, then a couple minutes later, of course, it happens again. Luckily this time it was just one cockroach, and I was more careful. I was kind of dancing around, trying not to stay still for too long and just really paying attention. But man, it seems to be something that you just absolutely cannot avoid, because when it gets that flooded, they just come out, and it's very disgusting. And that is apparently the steep price we must pay if you want to take this kind of photos in this godforsaken city. So anyway, after enduring another assault, molestation by yet another family of cockroaches, I only had about 3 frames left on my camera. I kind of stood in the shelter for a little bit, waiting for things to calm down a little bit so I could even call a Grab, which is Uber but in Southeast Asia. And I decided to leave because I did not have the motivation to keep going on taking like phone photos as I'm out of film in a situation like this where I'm inevitably going to get violated again. So I decided to go home. I took one more photo in the car and some nice B-roll footage because, you know, even the car was like submerged. I had these nice fantasies of what if the car starts leaking and the cockroaches come into the car. Man, that's a good way to go, right? And anyway, to finish the roll, I took this surprisingly nice selfie the next day. That was all for this shoot. I'm definitely going to be using this camera a lot more. I gotta fix the exposure mistakes, get better at that. But otherwise, I am really excited about using this camera again. I think I'm gonna buy some proper rain gear, like long boots and a raincoat and maybe a flamethrower, so that next time I'll have a fighting chance when these monsters come out of their hiding places. But anyway, that is all for me. Follow me on Twitter if you want to see photos at Timo's Photo, and you can follow me on Instagram if you want to see these stories of my little adventures. And make sure to subscribe to this channel. I'm still a very small time creator here on YouTube, so all of your comments and, you know, positive signals help a lot to keep the motivation to keep making videos up. I really appreciate all of that, and I'll see you in the next video.